Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a DFS review video for the 2021 Rocket Mortgage Classic where Cameron Davis is your winner. If you want to take a look at what I'll be covering in this video, you can find timestamps in the description below. Those timestamps can also be found on YouTube's progress bar. All you have to do is hover over it and you'll see exactly what I'll be covering in this video. Now, I kind of wasn't sure if I wanted to create a review video because with the 4th of July landing on a Sunday, I was up with family and friends. I didn't get home until really late last night, and that's usually when I record the review video. So then Monday came along, and I'm like, I think I want one out there because I want you guys to see the process, how it worked out this week. I also want this information for next year's preview video. So obviously it makes sense to do one. So here we are, Monday afternoon. I'm going to get this one out. I've already worked on the John Deere Classic preview video, or I should say preview for the video. So that one shouldn't come out too late tonight. Still got some things to work out, but for the most part, I think I got ahead, and I wanted to give you this one. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Very first thing, let's just talk about a recap. So we have Cameron Davis winning. You can see there's 3 people tied there at 18 under. Cameron Davis, Troy Merritt, and Joaquin Niemann. Davis wins in 4 playoff holes. Joaquin Niemann lost out on the first one. He bogeyed the very first playoff hole, and that was his first bogey for the entire tournament. He went 72 holes without a bogey. Decides to get his first bogey on the worst hole to have one at. But, I mean, still was a great tournament by Joaquin Niemann. And that left Cameron Davis and Troy Merritt to play out the rest. And I mean, we haven't seen Merritt win in a very long time. In fact, I don't even remember the last tournament he had won. But obviously Cameron Davis hadn't won on the PGA Tour yet. This marked his first victory. It was awesome. He holed out a eagle chip from the sand on hole 17 and then birdied hole 18 just to get into this playoff, which was remarkable. Like, that's really cool. He had bogeyed the hole before, hole 16. So he went bogey, eagle, birdie to get in this playoff. It's awesome. So I'm glad someone like it's fun to watch Cameron Davis play. Short game's a little shaky, but his tee game is fantastic. Putting is pretty good usually. Everything in between is okay, but when you are that skilled off the tee and you can hold a decent amount of putts, you're going to have a chance to win on the PGA Tour anytime. And obviously Cameron Davis came through. Let's talk about the rest of the top 10 here. We have Alex Noren, who shot a 64, I believe, an 8 under round on Sunday to basically be in the clubhouse, the very first guy in the clubhouse. I shouldn't say the very first. Bubba, I think, was the very first person in the clubhouse at the mark that he was at. But then Alex Noren does one better. He was 17 under for a very long time. Wasn't sure if anyone was going to get to 18, but obviously Cam Davis, Eagles number 17 to get him to 17 under. So I knew there was going to be a playoff, or I felt like there would be a playoff. And Niemann had just been floating. He needed 4 birdies to get to the 18 under mark. And he really didn't birdie a lot on the backside, but he did birdie when he needed to get in this playoff. I mean, it was like well-deserved. He should have won this tournament, but ends up not doing so. Anyways, moving on from there, Hank Lebioda I think he's had 3 cuts and 2 top 10s now, or maybe even 3 top 10s in the last 7 weeks. So he's very boomer bust, which is great. You want a golfer like that in your lineup. But yeah, Hank Lebioda, 17 under, that's a really good finish. Watson, like Bubba, kind of looked dejected. He barely made the cut. He made it by 1 stroke and obviously finished in 6th place. So good on Bubba. I think he also shot a 64, an 8 under 64 as well on the last day. Then we've got Brandon Hagee, Mark Anderson, Seamus Power as kind of, I don't want to say, forgettable names, but, we don't see them that much inside the top 10. So good to see them there, some fresh faces. And then Sung J M finishing inside the top 10, it's like the first time in forever, it feels like, along with Kevin Kisner, who'd been kind of shaky as of late. And I think that's all I have to talk about for top 10. But it was a fun tournament. I didn't get to watch a lot of it, but the little bits that I did, I thought it was kind of interesting. I like to go from here into the optimal lineup versus the whatever the highest entry fee GPP I played in, which was the $5 drive the green. Golfers that are highlighted in blue were a part of that $5 winning lineup. So we had Cameron Davis, Joaquin Niemann, Troy Merritt, Hank Lebioda, Bubba Watson, and Jason Kokrak. Used up $50,000 of the salary, and it scored 695.5 points. Now that's really interesting because if you look, this guy had everybody except for one golfer inside the top 10. And in order to get the optimal lineup, you more often than not need all 6 inside the top 10. So he was really close. Kokrak here in 12th place scored 103 points. That was really good. But the optimal lineup were Cameron Davis, Joaquin Niemann, Troy Merritt, Hank Lebioda, Bubba Watson, and Sung J M. So you just had to replace Kokrak with Sung J M, leave $200 on the table, and score 2.5 more points, which is amazing, right? This is the closest I've ever seen a GPP winning lineup to the optimal. That's a lie. There was a WGC event where somebody did it. It was same lineup as the optimal. So, and it's a little easier there because that's a no-cut event. And I believe that used up all $50,000 of the salary. So it rarely ever happens, but in a full field like this, that's really impressive. And I can't remember who it... Oh, I think his name was Go Get It, but I couldn't help think of like the Sean Connery, how he would say it, which would be like Goj Tit, something like that. But anyways, Go Get It won the $5 GPP. I really don't have to do a realistic lineup. Usually I want anything greater than 49,000 to be a lineup worth building to try to beat the GPP or get as close to the optimal. These both accomplish that. The winning lineup did it, and the optimal lineup did it as well. Just to highlight it, it's 3 9K golfers and 3 7K golfers. That ended up making the optimal lineup. That's the first that I've seen like this in a while. Usually I like a 10K golfer and then move on, 9, 8, 2 7s, and a 6 usually. Let's go from here into the SweetSpot Score, just to recap how well that did. Go ahead and put a filter on this and then position it, because that's kind of what that just makes sense, right? So when I look at the top 10, Mark Anderson caps the top 10 down here. That's not right. That does not look right. Is this 11 golfers? Oh, it is. Okay. I always want to see, there's 156 golfers in this field. If we take half of that, it's 78. So I want the ranking... I want the majority of the golfers to be ranked 78 or lower. The rank is based off the score. So obviously we can easily tell that. Mark Anderson and Brandon Hagee are the only golfers that do not accomplish that. So the majority are in that threshold that I want. So for me, SweetSpot Score was pretty on point. I'm sure I have 2 guys inside the top 10 that were top 10 rankings in the field this week. And just to recap that again, I'm looking at official world golf ranking, the grass stats. So this was POA this week. Course history, bogey avoidance, birdie or better. Then I look at recent form stats and DraftKings points, their average finishing position, their average scoring, or their scoring average, I should say, for each round that they play, and then season-long DK and season-long scoring averages. So that made up the score that then went into the rank. Obviously, if we have most of our golfers that are, under 78, that was perfect. From here, I think it's only logical to go to our tee time, our anchor tee time positions, tee time pairings, our anchor tee time pairings. So if I go ahead and sort this by game number, obviously we talked about this in the strategy video. I separate this by each pairing that there is. There were only 4 marquee pairings. And usually each one of these pairings has a golfer that finishes either inside the top 10 or top 20. We want top 10 finishes, but we can be okay with top 20 finishes. And again, I just started doing this, so this was maybe six weeks in the making, and all but, including this year, all but 2 years, or not 2 years, 2 tournaments, I have not seen each pairing produce a top 10 finisher or a top 20 finisher I'll correct that. It should be top 20. And here, it's all but one. So in that first group of Bubba Watson, Max Homa, Matthew Wolff, Bubba finished top 10. The next group was Ricky Fowler, Phil Mickelson, and Hideki Matsuyama. Now, Matsuyama had to withdraw because of COVID. So that kind of stunk, and that really took this group. I mean, the chances diminish quite a bit when you don't have all three. Instead, we had the two, Ricky Fowler, Phil. You know, Ricky's been playing decent golf as of late, but you couldn't trust either of those guys. Unfortunately, we didn't have a top 10 finisher in that marquee group. The next one was Sung Jae Im, so there we go. Sung Jae was in the marquee group. We could have done that, but just to make things better, Jason Kokrak was there. So the two golfers you could have switched were right here in front of us. Which this is, I like to start here with anchoring my lineups around some of these guys. There weren't a lot of 10K golfers in here. Bryson wasn't here, and neither was Will Zalatoris in any of these groups. Now, the 10K golfers just did terrible all around. Obviously, Matsuyama had to withdraw because of COVID. Simpson, Bryson, they both missed the cut. I don't see Patrick Reed. Oh, yeah, Patrick Reed's right here. He's the only 10K golfer. Well, him and Zalatoris are the only 10K golfers to make the cut. And neither of them finished well. So 10K golfers were not the play. Should have stuck with one of the 9K golfers here. So marquee tee times, or the anchor tee times, could have started there, and that would have been just fine. Because we want two golfers out of that, right? We always want to select two golfers from these marquee tee times. None is what I'm looking for. And we had them inside the top 10. Okay. So from here, I think I want to... let me just take everybody out that is not a part of the top 10. I want to look at the bucket system and I want to review it to see how well it did. So the very first thing that I like to do in my strategy videos is look at the anchor buckets, go over which ones are important, and I usually look at the top 5 frequencies to see how often this has happened. Now, the caveat here is that we only have 2 years of data to, create a bucket system off of. Now, course history was not a part of it because we don't have enough years of data to actually consider anything course history. I usually like at least 2 years of tournament play before I start recording course history. So this would be the first year I start recording it, because obviously the golfers in this field may have played the last 2 years, maybe not, maybe they just played 1 year, but at least I'm getting a finish from them most of the time. Next year might be completely different, where we have a bunch of golfers that have never played this tournament before. And that could be it. But for this, I thought it would be worthwhile just to try it, and we'll go through this really quickly. So I'm not looking at last year's stats because, I mean, last year, well, we can look at last year's stats. Let's see if it worked out. Yeah, we can look at last year's stats. So last year, 2s were golfers who finished 40 to 60th place. And the top 5 frequency, my min was 2. So let's go ahead and see, did we have 2 golfers that were last year 1s inside the top 10? We do not. Last year 2s. I'm sorry, last year 2s. So you have 1, 2, 3. So that one hit. For an anchor bucket for last year, that one hit. So we can go ahead and green this out just to say which ones hit and which ones didn't. For those in last year bucket 3, those are guys who missed the cut last year, and we've seen one every single year so far inside the top 5. But I'm using this for top 10 finishes, so let's go ahead and take a look to see if we do have those top 10 finishes for last year 3s. Sure enough, we have one who won it. 2, 3, 4. 4 golfers in that bucket. So we can go ahead and mark that green. Looking at last year 1s, did this one hit? We only have 1. So no, it did not. We can go ahead and mark that one red. How about last week 3s? Those are golfers who were in the top 20 last week. And how many did we want again? We wanted just 1. So last week 3s, Hank Lebioda, but we had a slew of them. So we had 4 in total. That one ended up hitting. I would have told you don't play more than 2. So that obviously wouldn't have worked out. But either way, we did get our 1. I really don't think it hurts you. I mean, if we take a look at this, Power and Kisner were not in the optimal lineups, but Watson and Lebioda were. So, yeah, that worked out really well if I were to say just use 2. Last week, 2s are golfers who missed the cut last week, and we wanted at least 2 of them. Do we see that? Let's see. Hagee was one of them, and that's it. So that one did not hit. This one will obviously go down a little bit, but I think it'll show at least 1 inside the top 10 each week. Was it top 5 as well? No, just missed out. The other bucket that we wanted to anchor around in the last week category was the did not plays. We're looking for at least 2, so this is last week 1s. We want at least 2 of those, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that one ended up hitting, and it ended up hitting the max mark as well, so that was good. As we look at recent form 3s, this is their average finishing position over the last 7 weeks. Really, it's the last 8 weeks. In between that 20 to 40th average finishing position, we want to just at least 1 of those guys. So when you look at the recent form column, I have 1, so that one hit. It was just 1, and that was Troy Merritt. So we can go ahead and mark this green as well. The next one is recent form 1s. That's that 40 to 60 range. We wanted at least 1. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that one ended up hitting as well. Looking at recent form 2s, we wanted at least 2. That's that 60 to 80 range. Do we have that? 1, 2. Our winner was from that bucket, and we actually had 3. So that one ended up working out as well. And I really don't look at salaries or strokes gained or anything like that because there's not enough data. I think it goes back only 3 years. And I get it. This is a new tournament. We could probably take it all in together. But my experience, my history with doing this, it really never pans out. But we can take a look. Do we have an 8K golfer inside the top 10? We do. Kevin Kisner. So that one ended up hitting. Do we have a golfer inside the 7K? We know that one's true. How about a golfer that is in that 6.5 to 6.9 range? We have a 6,100 golfer, 62. We don't. So our only two 6K golfers are the lower 6K range. Interesting. That's the first I've ever seen. So that one did not hit. Strokes gained 1, 2, 3, and 4. We can just do that simple. No strokes gained 1, but we have a 2, we have a 3, we have a 4. So ended up working out. I mean, I could have went up here as well and did that. So it was just nothing but 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. No 6s, which are no stats, and no 1s, which is everything positive. And if we take a look, I mean, we only had 5 where everything was positive. I think I said this in the strategy video. I think this is a bucket that will probably fail because of how much fewer, or how fewer, not how much, how fewer golfers are in this bucket than on average. We usually have 10, we only had 5, so that one didn't hit, but I think we could have predicted that. I mean, my projection was around 0. The other 2, or the other 3 buckets ended up hitting. So all in all, I mean, when we look at this, these were the anchor buckets. Pretty good. I don't think we really laid a goose egg except for strokes gained 1 or salaries. We just couldn't get to some of the numbers that were up here. And again, that kind of, to me, comes with not having a lot of data to be applied to the bucket system, which is unfortunate because I want the bucket system to work anytime. But we only had 2 years prior to this year. This is the 3rd year this tournament's ever been played. Ended up not working out as well as we had hoped. One thing I had forgotten to talk about when we looked at the results and recap is target score and what type of tournament this was. It was well discussed throughout the industry. This was a birdie fest, and sure enough, I mean, it ended up being a birdie fest. How many guys did we have 10 under or more? I mean, we had 31 golfers that were at least 10 under or better. So that itself lends into a birdie fest. When we actually look at some of these top 5 finishes, so if I go 6th place, that's 16 under. You know, 4th place was 16 under in 2020, And then 16 under was, well, 11th place in 2019. So it was very similar. It's just some of these winners got to some numbers that, you know, aren't achievable. But if we look at some of these numbers just below it, 19 to 18, it's pretty spot on. So although we didn't have a 20 under winner, it still was a birdie fest. You still needed the birdies. And one thing I didn't discuss when it was going, or when I discovered, when I went over the optimal lineup versus the GPP winning lineup, is the fact that Joaquin Niemann didn't make a bogey all 72 holes, which means he got that 3-point bonus on DraftKings for each 4 rounds that he played. That's 12 points. First place gets 10 points, first place gets 30 points for obviously finishing first. Second place gets 20 points. So both Merritt and Niemann got 20 points each. As you can see, Merritt almost outscored Cameron Davis. And both of them, if we take out all finishing positions, so we take 30 points away from this and we take 20 points away from this, Davis still outscores Niemann because he had more birdies, and he didn't have a single bogey for your round. So just so you guys know, I mean, we always want a volatile golfer who makes a ton of birdies and might make a bunch of bogeys to go with it. More so than we want a flawless golfer who isn't making a lot of bogeys or just no bogeys at all. Until it comes to a grinded out golf course where scoring is not a premium and making pars is. That 3-point bonus is pretty much the differentiator most of the time during that tournament. During this, it isn't. And Joaquin Niemann, I don't think, is really known as a grinded out golfer. He does thrive in scoring conditions. So, you know, it's just one of those unique situations. When you look at the leaderboard here, a bunch of guys are over 100 points. If I were to put a filter on this, sometimes I like looking at this to see how the points shake out. So like we have a bunch of guys that are top 20 that are beat out by some of these 20th place finishes. But by and large, your top 10 finishers are your top scorers. And that happens most of the time. So I know a lot of discussion goes about saying, oh, well, we don't have to worry about finishing position because you just want scores. It's not wrong, but it's also not fully true. Like, it's half right. And I'm not one that lives off of half truths or even half lies. The full truth is you want most of your golfers inside the top 10, if not all of them. I always say it that way because there are moments where you can get an optimal lineup with a 12th place finish or an 11th place finish to go along with your other 5 top 10 finishes. It does happen. It's very infrequent, but you can't make a declarative saying it you need all the time. It just doesn't happen sometimes. So, but anyways, all your top 10 guys are your, not all of them, but most of your top 10 guys are your top scorers. You can see Kokrak finished 12th, beat out Hagee in power, but you don't see any of the other guys in the top 10 lower than that. That's my only thing I wanted to add. Again, I forgot to do that when discussing the GPP winning lineup and optimal lineup. So from here, what I want to do really quickly is just go over all the top 20 stats, just so you guys have an idea. You know, obviously we hear touts and other people around the industry talk about what stats matter and why you need this and why you need that. Let's see if it actually matters, okay? As we look at grass stats, I'll go ahead, filter this out by the best grass stats. This is overall POA average dating back to 2013. You can obviously see the position here. This is your finishing position. What we'd rather see is more top 10, top 20s than missed cuts. And frankly, we probably don't want to see any missed cuts. So when you look at this, everybody up here has over 10 events at least. So it's always a good measurement to look at that. I would say, you know, POA stats, yeah, we got some of our top 10 finishers. Only 2 of our optimal lineup guys here, which means it wasn't a huge stat to go by. It didn't really matter all that much. And there are more missed cuts than there are top 10, top 20s. So yeah, probably, you know, going forward, not the greatest stat to rely on. Again, the top 10 success rates on POA, Bubba and Joaquin Niemann show up. They're the only 2 guys that are in the optimal lineup. Looking at 2021 POA splits, we have 3 guys in the optimal lineup, including Sungjae, who was the second best in this field. Going by 2021 post splits, that actually sticks a little bit better than overall average. So something to keep in mind. Maybe going back a year or something like that would be the better way of looking at post splits. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. One thing I don't do all that often that I kind of want to do is kind of review. I have this whole section called recent form, last 7 weeks, and it's just recording the raw stats, like strokes gain stats, just to show you guys, you know, does recent form really matter when it comes to strokes gain stats? Our winner, you would argue not, because his strokes gain total was poor. Everything else was poor except for his putting. You can see second place, Joaquin Niemann. He's kind of an elite golfer, so it works out. And in fact, we probably see more green than we do anything, but you're not getting to Cameron Davis by looking at something like this. Especially if you exclude anybody who is in negative strokes gain stats on anything but putting. But it's always interesting to look at this top 10. Again, I encourage you to pause the video at any time during any of my videos to look at the data and kind of analyze it yourself. But let's go ahead and look at, well, how about this? Season-long DraftKings average. Does this matter? This would be your top 10 or your top 20 golfers right here, top to bottom. This includes all events. So if they only played last week's event and scored really well, obviously that's going to show up. But going by DraftKings points, not terrible. You got a winner here in Cameron Davis. And we got some top 10 finishes. We have 3 in the optimal lineup, so that wasn't terrible. Scoring average, if we go top to bottom, yeah, 2 golfers, Sungjae and Joaquin. So Joaquin's just showing up all over the place. Low round, does that show up? Sure, 2 golfers again, Joaquin up there as well. Looking at the top tee to green stats. That was pretty good. Tee to green was a good stat to go by. Look at all the top 10s. 3 optimal lineup golfers here. So that was a good one to go by. How about off the tee? This was a driver's paradise. 4 of our golfers, not only in the top GPP winning lineup, but also in the optimal lineup. So we have Sungjae there. I mean, Sungjae and Jason Kokrak. So you could have interchanged those. Okay, good to know. Obviously, we knew this was a driver track, but here you go. There were 4 golfers we could have selected inside the top 20. The other 2 golfers are not up here. There's Hank Lebioda, who is way down here in 88th place. And then Troy Merritt's down here in 113th place for off the tee stats. So not everybody. Again, you have to differentiate and add some golfers that don't fit a certain profile. Doing an all lineup build on either bombers or no putt or whatever, not the right way to go. That's really bad advice. Might work once in a blue moon, but usually if you are here doing or watching these review videos every single week, you know that it doesn't ever work out that way. Your top approach stats, this was not a stat that was really worth caring about. Joaquin Niemann, optimal lineup guy, he's inside the top 20, but that's it. Around the green, nobody shows up inside the optimal lineup, inside the top 20 for this stat, in this field that is. Putting, we have Kokrak, who was in the GPP winning lineup, but then we also have Joaquin Niemann. So Niemann's just popping up all over the place. He's in the side of the top 20 for almost every stat. Should have been easy to select him. And then there's some kind of miscellaneous stats. Does driving distance matter? 2 guys inside the optimal, inside the top 20. For this field, for that stat, I know that's kind of a tongue twister, but all these stats are top 20 for this field. Driving accuracy, 1 guy, Sungjae, inside or in the optimal lineup up here. Good drive percentage. That's Sungjae. Green and reg percentage. We have 2 guys, Niemann, or we have 3 pretty close. Sungjae's in 21st position, but Lebioda and Niemann up there, not terrible. Proximity, only Lebioda, so that's kind of cool. 1 putt percentage, nobody. 1 putt 5 to 10 feet, Niemann and Cam Davis. So there you go, Davis is up there. 1 putt percentage from 10 to 15 feet, just Kokrak, and he was not in the optimal lineup. Bogey avoidance, We have Sungjae and Hank Lebioda. There we go. More reasons to play Lebioda that we should have been on. Birdie or better. 3 of our guys up there. In the optimal, 3 inside the GPP winning lineup. And that's really the last stat that I'm going to cover. I always like to go through that because it gives you guys a good idea. You know, we hear people in the industry always say, oh, this is a bomber's track, or this is a second, it's a shot maker's golf course, or a second shot golf course. We want to look at approach, that kind of stuff. I always like analyzing the top 10 to show you that doesn't work all the time. If you truly want to win a GPP, you can't just look at those stats. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are smart enough to realize that, where it's like, yeah, of course not. But I'm going to create a core around, you know, 3 or 4 golfers that are good in that stat. Well, hopefully some of this also proves that having 3 or 4 is too many. Maybe just picking 2 or 3. 3 at a max. But it's just a way to show you. Because I'm a visual learner. I also love visual proof. This is my way of providing that for you guys. So, I think with that, I'm going to end it. Again, we only had 3 years of data, so I'm not too concerned with, you know, how accurate the bucket system was. But, I mean, again, we don't ever talk about salary or strokes gained. If we look at the other buckets, we had 2 buckets that didn't hit. We ended up having 7 buckets that did hit. So that's a pretty good percentage. And when, like, these numbers are really, like, high, they're going to fall from grace a little bit. We did have a golfer from each of these buckets show up inside the top 10. We just didn't have as many as are shown on the screen. So we didn't have 4 or 2. So yeah, all in all, I think it was a good week. I was just off of winning a lot of money. I was winning the quarter arcade for a while. I had a couple winner take alls that were in first place. Unfortunately, Sunday's round came around, and it seems like this happens to me more often than not. 2 of my golfers, usually it's always like 2 of the lower guys, so my 7K golfers that I end up choosing, kind of crap the bed and finish somewhere between like 30th to 50th place, and that just shoots me out of all those contests. So for the most part, I did well. Didn't make my money back, so that was unfortunate. Did make some back, so that's good. I can push that forward to the John Deere Classic, which again, I will have that preview out to you guys soon. Other than that, that's going to be a wrap here. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a comment, subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you in the preview for the John Deere coming up soon. All right, bye.